yet, and we're going to have 3 citizen members. The citizen members, I hope to have basically guys that with a good engineering background or at least a good background in electricity so that we can somehow move forward on this. If there's any discussion on this, now is the time to ask the questions. Linda?
Wouldn't it be a good idea to state in the resolution the composition of it that you just outlined? You know, 3 citizen, 2 board? Is it? Well, but the actual numbers.
Well, Mr. Marzoff?
I think that's a good idea, and I think if we just inserted the number of the word two in front of supervisors under the first, and inserted the number 3 in front of the word non-supervisor, perhaps that would satisfy the supervisor's concern.
In essence, that's what I said we were going to do, is exactly what we're going to do. We're going to have 2 board members and 3 citizen members on the committee. And it is an ad hoc committee, by the way. Mr. Bora.
Have you considered having our maintenance chief on there with his knowledge of our buildings and the current status of our structures?
No, I think he's, personally, I think he's always welcome to be there for a committee meeting. But we've not given the consideration of doing that. Buck?
I take it you'd make the same point with respect to other staff members who could have significant, important, and informed input. They would be welcome as resource persons, but not voting members of the committee. Is that your vision of it, Mr. Chairman?
That's absolutely right. Any board member can go to any committee meeting that they want to go to as a viewer. They don't have a vote unless they're on that committee. Same thing would apply here.
And staff members would be called in as needed, such as Mr. Whiting or Mr. Ramberg or the like. Is that your idea?
Absolutely.
All right, then I'll make a motion to amend the resolution to, as Mr. Marzoff indicated, to insert the word 2 in front of the word supervisors and the word 3 in front of the word non-supervisors.
Second.
You've heard the amendment. Is there a second to it? Linda seconded it. Any other discussion? Buzz?
Buzz, would you turn on your mic, please?
I'd like to call our attention to a program being sponsored by the UW Extension on Wednesday, July 30th from 8:30 to 4:30. There's going to be a renewable energy bus tour originating from the Baldwin Ag Center, and I don't see any deadline for registration here, but the cost is only $15, and I think it would be well worth our time for as many of us as are able or interested to participate in this and become informed on what's already being done.
Thank you for that input. I was going to talk about it later. There are forms in the back if you wish to join up and take in this thing. There is a deadline date. The deadline date at $15 is July 25th. If you come in late, the registration is $20. It's a good program. They're going to River Falls and they're going to go out to Emerald Dairy and view that. It's about a 6-hour deal. Starts at 8:30 in the morning in Baldwin, ends at 4:30 again at Baldwin. Encourage anybody that's got the time and wants to do it to do that. Mr. Malley.
Mr. Chairman, I believe you said in your vision for this that the committee should especially pay attention to the possibility of using county lands as the sites of such alternative energy sources. I don't find that in the resolution, but it looks like it could be added to the last whereas after the word county, So where it says, and consider their uses by the county, it could say by the county on county property. Is that the sort of thing you had in mind?
That's exactly what I had in mind, right.
Then let me offer that amendment, now that we've disposed of the first amendment by, no, we haven't adopted it yet. Let me hold that, if I may, Mr. Chairman,
Okay,
until the
you've,
first amendment is dealt with.
you've heard the first amendment, and there was a second. And there's been discussion. Is there any more discussion on that particular amendment? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Now we'll move to the second amendment.
All right, let me offer the amendment to insert in the last whereas after the word county, on county property.
Doesn't that, isn't that going to limit this? I mean, I think it maybe unnecessarily narrows it down. I mean, maybe that's not all that we want to look at with an energy committee.
Could I respond, Mr. Rebholz? The very next phrase says, and education programs for the public. I did not propose to remove that language, which could very well amount to things such as identifying locations on other people's property, which would be suitable for them to install facilities. But the scope of the committee from the identification of specific sites related to the county's generation of electricity ought to be on county property, it seems to me. That's what I had in mind.
I see it appropriate because it says it will consider their uses by the county and county land, on county land.
Actually, I said on county property. I'm thinking that sometimes, Mr. Chairman, for instance, solar conversion to electricity ought to be on a roof, or could be on a roof. I know in the broadest sense that's on land, but maybe it's a little more accurate to say on county property, which includes both land and buildings.
Any other questions?
Not about the resolution, but the process in general, whether we could get someone from UW River Falls, as they're headed on a course for a green, self-sufficient campus. As you're suggesting, engineers, perhaps they would have an expertise to move us along.
I might just add that one of the people that I'd like to put on this citizen committee is a professor at the University of River Falls. Who seconded that second amendment? I didn't catch it either, Dave Austin. Further discussion on the second amendment. Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, the same. Aye. Motion carries. Okay.
You know what, there was never a main motion made. No one put it on the floor.
Okay. I thought that's what we did with the motion.
That was an amendment, first amendment.
Oh, that was-
Second amendment.
Okay. Okay, we need to vote on the resolution itself. Oh, Buzz?
I move that this resolution as amended.
Elfie? Is there any other comment on the resolution? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same. Carries. Okay. The second resolution we're working on today is the resolution creating the Substance Abuse Committee as a St. Croix County Standing Committee. Many of you will remember that was called the Meth Committee before. But their intention is to be moving to other forms of substance abuse, particularly in teenagers such as alcohol and/or prescription drugs. Is there a motion to accept or put this resolution on the floor? Seconded by Ed, or by John Mortensen. Any discussion on the resolution? Linda?
Same comment as the last one. Shouldn't we outline what the composition of the committee is, the numbers, and if there are specific, you know, one from this, one from that, et cetera? I
Esther?
know it already exists, but this is a formal resolution creating it permanently, so I just thought maybe we ought to state how many and where they're coming from.
Esther, will you tell us the composition of that committee?
The composition of the committee has 3 appointed supervisors. We also have a person from the mental health AODA at the health center. We also have a person from public health. We have the sheriff, the district attorney. We have people that represent outside. These are all volunteers outside of the 3 appointed ones. The other people are all volunteers on the committee. We also have the police chief from Somerset. We also have the Youth Services Bureau. We have a public defender, Ann Davy. Our committee, some people make all the meetings and some people can only come once in a while, so we have not really made a set list of who should be there because they are volunteers. Also, Doreen Revard has been very instrumental in helping us with our committee and continues to do so. I think if we want to list the 3 appointed supervisors and volunteers, because we never know how many are going to come. Sometimes we have a full house, maybe 20 people will be there, and the next time we may just only have like 8 or 9. Yes, we have Joan Sprain, who represents UW Extension. Thanks, Buck. I've forgotten that.
So the actual makeup of the committee is 3 supervisors,
Yes,
plus volunteers.
plus volunteers. And we've been very fortunate that those volunteers have been so eager to help us and have been committed to what we're doing.
Linda, where would this be put into the agenda, into the resolution?
Probably the first therefore, or the only therefore. You could say creates the Substance Abuse Committee consisting of 3 county board supervisors and volunteers. And I'll make that motion.
That's a motion to amend, right?
Yes.
You have a motion to amend and a second to add, at that point, 3 supervisors and volunteers. All those in favor? Any other discussion first?
A clarification on this. My understanding is that the 3 supervisors are paid per diem and expenses, but nobody else is. That's what Ms. Wentz means by volunteer, right?
Yes.
Could we include that in the motion too? For instance, right after the amendment that talks about the 3 supervisors, say who shall be the only persons compensated or something like that, or everybody else shall be volunteers not compensated, to make that clear for 10 years from now when we aren't around and somebody's trying to figure out what it means.
Mr. Cranmer?
Perhaps Ms. Lucky would be willing to amend her motion. Perhaps Ms. Lucky would be willing to amend her motion to say unpaid volunteers.
I will.
Why couldn't we just put into that motion 3 paid county supervisors and unpaid volunteers?
Fine with me.
Mr. Hermsen?
Thank you, Chair. The question I would have is, of these volunteers on this committee, would they have a vote as to what the action that the committee would take? Or is it only the only members of the board that are assigned to that committee that can bring a vote out of that committee that could come to this body.
Esther, you've got the volunteers. Are there some voters on that volunteer group?
Yes, all the people that are at our meeting, if something comes up that needs to be voted on, everyone has a vote there. But you have to understand that most of the things that we are passing or bringing forth into the community are educational things, speakers forums, or a brochure. We're not making policy of any kind. So it's just basically, we're providing information and education. So it's not something that we're gonna give money out or make a decision on spending money. Dissemination of information.
Steve?
The reason I'm asking the question is if we had a large number of volunteers or that could overwhelm a vote of the committee members off of this board, would force something to come forward to this body here that the committee members could not override. And that's, I guess, I question whether that's really right.
Well, yes, Buck.
Related to that, Mr. Chairman, this resolution doesn't seem to have the language that the one we just passed does, which talks about appointment by the county board chair in consultation with the vice chair. It would seem to me that if we incorporated that language, it would help to address Mr. Hermson's concerns and others that, for example, 100 people show up one day as volunteers at a meeting when there's a topic of particular interest to them, and they want to see a resolution passed that's, for example, would require the sheriff to do something radically different than the sheriff as a constitutional officer feels ought to be done. I don't think any of us would want to see that, but if you and the vice chair were making those appointments, there would be some built-in qualifications and some built-in delay that would minimize the chance for a sudden shift in direction of this committee's work. So I'd like to test that idea on the other members and see whether they like that idea as an amendment. The number then wouldn't have to be limited. The number of volunteers wouldn't have to have a number in it, but it would be subject to the discretion of the chair and the vice chair as to how many they appoint and from what disciplines and interests and so on.
Well, are we saying then that maybe this particular resolution should be tabled until we rearrange the language?
I didn't say that, but I guess, Mr. Chairman, that would be an approach. There's probably nothing urgent that requires us to act on it this month rather than next, and give it back to the committee to consider reworking a little bit. I'll make a motion to table this until next month.
You heard the motion and the second to table this motion until next month. It's so done.
Mr. Chairman, just a question of clarification in anticipation of our next meeting. Then, Esther, can I ask if this goes to a standing permanent committee, are the roles clear, like with Health and Human Services and the AODA responsibilities that they have in the courts and the sheriff and so on? You're satisfied with that?
Yes, I'm very satisfied that the roles are very well defined. I did miss a couple of people. Amber Perry is our drug court coordinator. She's also part of our committee. And I think too that all of the people that are there for the same reason, to educate the public about the dangers of substance abuse.
Okay, thanks, Esther.
Esther, I would suggest that you might get together with Linda. Linda would be gracious enough to help us with the final wording.
That would be great. Thank you.
Bill?
Just wanted to say, don't we have to vote?
Yep.
And
give us his presentation on emergency management.
Morning. A lot of you I know, there's a lot of new board members on the board that I'm not familiar with. So what I thought I'd do this morning is just give you a quick, brief overview of the Emergency Management Department here in the county. For all of you, I don't know if you're aware of it, but emergency management is broken into 4 basic phases. There's the mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. In those 4 phases, I'm not involved in all of them. You're involved in some of them, but not all of them. And others that neither you or I are involved in some of these phases. And by that I mean, we'll start with the beginning. With mitigation, it's accomplished through resolutions, ordinances, rules, and regulations, primarily developed through elected officials or upper management. You as a county board are developing a lot of the mitigation aspects within the county. Our committee, the Emergency Management Committee, tried addressing and looked at different things dealing with mobile homes. As Mr. Borup and Julie and Buck are familiar with being on our committee, and these issues I think are being handled locally by the local governments. So that's one phase. I'm not directly involved in that phase. Preparedness. Here's where emergency management starts playing a much more progressive role. In preparedness, we're looking at planning, training, and resources. Planning, over the years, we've worked with each of the communities, 3 cities and all of the villages, to try and develop emergency management plans for their communities, to identify what they would do as a community and as elected officials and department heads within those communities, how they would handle any kind of a disaster or major emergency. To that end, we've been fairly successful. We have plans from all of the cities. I think there's only one village that is working on another plan at this time due to a change in elected officials. They felt they wanted to redo their plans. One of my goals is to have them update these plans on a yearly basis, and especially every 2 years when elections are made, because people change, and it re-emphasizes what their roles and responsibilities would be. Training. Training is an issue that I feel is probably, we've accomplished the best in northwestern Wisconsin of any of the counties. By that I mean participation. All of the emergency services in St. Croix County have participated in one form or another in different training classes that we've been able to sponsor or provide funding for. Now, we can't do a training for firefighters dealing with fire or law enforcement dealing with law enforcement issues, but we can do training through what's called hazardous materials response. And the reason for that, part of my job is dealing with hazardous materials within the communities. And through grants, we've been able to provide what's called incident command. Incident command is how they would manage incidents so that they have a better idea of how their departments would work and what hierarchy they would use within those departments. To that effect, I just wanted to quote you some figures that are compiled. And back up for just a second, I work on a federal fiscal year basis, which is October 1st through September 30th for all of my grants and the requirements for those grants. So the figures I'm going to quote for federal fiscal year 07 actually started October 1st, 2006. In federal fiscal year 07, we coordinated the presentation of 10 hazardous material response classes through WITC to 198 students took those 10 courses. I turned around and I taught 10 courses within the county as part of my job to 377 students participated in those courses. Now, these are representatives from all the different agencies. And then we received grant monies through the Office of Justice Assistance to allow us to coordinate the presentation of 17 incident command classes through WITC in this last year, 07, to 377 participants. Federal fiscal year 08, which started October 1st of last year, we coordinated the presentation of 17 hazardous material classes to 322 students. And by students, these are your representatives in the local communities who are either public sector employees or emergency response personnel. In 08 so far, I've taught 7 hazardous material classes to 165 participants throughout the county. And we've coordinated again through other grants through OJA 13 incident command classes to 241 people. So if you can see some of the figures, we have a very, very good participation by the agencies, by the communities in working with us to take advantage of the funding that we can provide for the training that we can also provide. And again, this funding is all 100% reimbursable to the county. I pay for the classes to WITC, but I then send in a bill to the state of Wisconsin, and they reimburse me 100% for these courses. Resources, we've been able to work through the Office of Justice Assistance to provide several different grants dealing with radio communications capabilities and equipment in the last couple of years. Last year, we had approximately $90,000 in grants written for equipment for emergency service agencies. So far this year, we're running somewhere in the neighborhood of $30,000 to $40,000 in grants, and it varies depending on what the costs are for some of the equipment and what grants are being applied for. In response, third phase of emergency management. This is primarily done by local emergency services, police, fire, EMS. However, in the storms that occurred in August of last year that affected the county, St. Croix County, I was out there in the city of New Richmond approximately midnight that night of the storm, working with the Sheriff's Department, who appreciated their efforts in helping me acquire damage assessment figures. One of the things that I'm involved in is the assessment of damages and the reporting of these damages to the state of Wisconsin. Along with the Sheriff's Department, we work directly with the Farm Service Agency in Baldwin, dealing with the agricultural community, trying to get figures on damages to crops, to livestock, to machinery and such, all of which we reported to Madison to try to give Madison an idea of what was the magnitude of the event. In looking at the communities that were affected, we had a little over $288,000 in damages to public sector areas. And that involved 5 towns and 5 villages and the city of New Richmond. Working with the clerks, bills for these, we compiled all of these, and these were submitted to the state of Wisconsin in the hope that we would be able to recover these costs through the state disaster fund, which was just brought into existence last year. So far, like I said, we've submitted $288,295. They have the paperwork, they have copies of all the bills. Now we're waiting to see what kind of funding we can get reimbursed back to the county that we could distribute to these communities that were affected. Recovery. That is where, again, I'm working with each of these communities, and I probably went into the recovery aspect when I mentioned these cost figures. But response in this capacity and recovery are closely related. It's to acquire damages, dollar amounts, how many people were affected, what was affected, how was it affected, and what can we do to help restore these things back to the way they were before the incidents occurred. So those are your 4 phases of emergency management. Within those phases, we have numerous grants that we've been lucky enough to acquire and made available to the county. And to give you an idea of the perspective of these grants, in federal fiscal year 07, we were able to bring back to the county $138,163.94 in grant revenue. Of that, $26,000 $472.69 was paid directly towards reimbursing the county for part of the emergency management cost of operations. In federal fiscal year '08, this year, which started October 1st of last year, to date, we've received $102,456 in revenue back to the county through all of our grants. Of that, so far, $57,716 is paid directly to the county to reimburse, again, emergency management costs. Part of this is last year's that they didn't pay us until '08, and then the balance is the '08 year. Currently, we've got 6 grants open or closed pending funding reimbursement back to the county. And these dollar amounts, I was surprised, when we added them up, we've got approximately $66,917 sitting there waiting for reimbursement or closeout on these grants. That's a lot of revenue, folks, but again, this revenue does not come to the county proper. It comes to municipalities, agencies, and that have worked with us, that applied through us for funding. And when I see figures like this, I see the cooperation that we're receiving, and because that's, to me, is a measurement of how effective our department is in trying to work with the communities. Is there any questions that I can try to answer for you? It's just a brief overview to show you what kind of revenue we've been able to acquire, what kind of participation we're getting from the county departments and agencies, and just an overview of what the activities are within our department. And again, we're only 1 1/4 department, really, in personnel time. Any questions? Any complaints? We keep those to ourselves, right? Okay? Satisfactory?
Thanks, Jack.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Appreciate it. Okay, the next thing on the agenda then will be to, number 3 on our agenda, to bring to the floor the resolution amending the rules and bylaws concerning administration committee serving as the ethics board. Someone willing to bring that to the floor? Julie, second. Esther? Okay. It's relatively self-explanatory. The administration committee, as I understand it, has always acted as the ethics committee here, but it wasn't listed in the bylaws of that committee. It now is, if you'll see by the resolution, that it is listed. It is part of a lot of counties have a separate, I understand, have a separate ethics committee. And this will serve our purpose pretty well. Any questions on this resolution? Yeah, it's on the floor. Bill, do you have a question?
Yes, I was wondering about if there's any conflict between this and the Finance Committee and supervision of the Personnel Department or area.
I don't see where there. I don't really see where there would be. Yeah, Bill, I should have explained that. It's an ethics committee for Board of Supervisors. Yeah. And the things that we do, it's an ethics. We need to follow our own rules, and that's what this is all about. Okay, you've heard the motion in a second. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. It's done. The next one on the agenda is the resolution designating an official authorized to declare official intent under reimbursement bond regulations. This is the one that Chuck talked about in his comments. Are we ready to bring it to the floor? Karen Norton Bowman has seconded, Mr. Marzoff has made the motion. Any discussion on this resolution? Yes, Buzz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to suggest a change in the wording of the second whereas. It reads, whereas one of the requirements of the regulations is that an issuer must timely declare. That's a little awkward, and I would recommend that we delete the word timely so that it reads, is that an issuer must declare in a timely manner an intention to reimburse itself, etc.
I'll second that.
Bill Kramer has seconded that. Okay, any discussion on that? Yes, Darrell.
Might I request if Corp Council has any reaction to one phraseology or the other?
No, I don't prefer one over the other.
Okay. Yes. Chuck?
I think the idea of the word timely is meant to have the declaration done before we start acquiring items. I think that's the purpose of that word. To just declare may suggest that declaring at any time as opposed to prior to acquiring items.
Darrell?
Well, what I was really trying to determine from Corp Council, is there any practical improvement with the suggested language as opposed to the way it currently reads, which does in fact state timely?
No, there is no practical improvement. It's a matter of style, I guess.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My suggestion was simply to try to clarify the wording and to reflect better on this board as a group of educated people. I don't mean in any way to criticize whoever phrased this way. My intent was simply to make it read better and therefore reflect better on us as a board.
Any other discussion? Steve?
Thank you, Chair. I guess, I think, Mr. Weld, I'm trying to, the administrator brings up a good point about the part of where timely is being used. So that there's no ambiguity here as to whether, and no confusion, do we want to rephrase that in such a way that it states that an issuer must declare an intention prior to reimbursement of itself, or some way of saying so that we know that this comes ahead of time and not after the fact?
Chuck?
My apologies to the board, but what I had heard coming from Supervisor Marzoff was the removal of the word timely, if the way it was explained to me by Greg.
Not entirely, but to just transpose it to a different location.
Right.
Can I just read it again in the revised form?
Turn on your mic, please.
Sorry. Whereas one of the requirements of the regulations is that an issuer must declare in a timely manner an intention to reimburse itself for the expenditure from proceeds of a tax-exempt borrowing. I just think that's a better read than the way it presently stood.
I don't think that will materially change anything, nor will it offend our bond counsel in Milwaukee who drafted this.
Linda?
Well, I have a question on a slightly different topic, but is it the intent of this that both the administrative coordinator and the finance director acting together? Are both of their signatures required to declare intent, or can just one of them do it?
I read it to be that they both have to because the word "and" is in there.
Well, I saw that, but then there's a
Yeah.
comma after administrative coordinator, so that made me wonder.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, and it's another semantic issue, but it should be clear. It reads to me that they both have to act in concert. Now, I think Mrs. Petrick is going to say it can be either one of them.
We have a motion on the floor and a second to change the verbiage here. There's been a lot of discussion. All those in favor of making this change, say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Aye. We will have a show of hands because I can't hear that good. All those in favor, say aye. Okay. All those opposed? I only got 13. I got 13 and 13. I don't know. I can't add very well today, I guess.
Mr. Chairman, did you get Mr. King's?
I voted. I didn't get you. I voted. Which way did you vote? First time. Okay. So then it's 14-13. So the change carries.
That's 27. There's 28 present.
One didn't vote. There's 27. I got 27. One, I didn't catch one. I voted. Let's do a roll call vote.
This is a vote on the amendment.
Just to vote on the change and this is just to change the wording.
Yes, but it's kind of messy right now, just a minute. I have a motion by Supervisor Marzoff, second by Supervisor Cranmer, to amend the second whereas to, I believe it's delete the word timely and after declare, indicate in a timely manner. Okay. All right. So it would read, whereas one of the requirements of the regulations is that an issuer must declare in a timely manner an intention to reimburse itself for the expenditure from proceeds of a tax-exempt borrowing. Official intent, correct? Okay. You ready? On a roll call for the amendment, Clarence Malick?
No.
Steve Hermson?
No.
Ken Colby?
No.
Linda Lucky?
Yes.
Shane Demuling?
Yes.
Dan Rabel?
No.
Alfred Schrank?
Yes.
Julie Spear?
Yes.
Bill Peavy?
No.
Gerald Peterson?
Yes.
Charlie Grant?
Yes.
Greg Telejohn?
No.
Roger Larson?
No.
Richard King?
Yes.
Frederick Horn?
Yes.
John Mortensen?
Yes.
Esther Wentz?
Yes.
Jean Ritz?
No.
David Peterson?
Yes.
David Osnes?
No.
Lauren Sather?
Yes.
Richard Marzoff?
Yes.
Sharon Norton Bauman?
No.
Peter Post?
No.
Roger Repholz?
No.
Bill Cranmer?
Yes.
Daryl Standifer?
No.
John Borup?
No.
14. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 14.
I'd still like to pin down if it's 2 people have to sign or just 1. And if it's both, I'd like to remove the comma. And if it's either or, I'd like to say or.
I'd like to make a motion to remove the comma that follows the words administrative.
Microphone.
In number 1 of the now therefore. So in the now therefore section number 1 of it, second line, after the word coordinator, the comma would be stricken. Then it would require unambiguously 2 people to agree.
I'll second that.
Program. Emergency communications.
My name is Casey Swellick. I'm the director of the Emergency Communications Center down in the lower level of this building. I hope to inform you of the events of the last year in the Communications Center in a very brief time frame, and then of course take any questions you may have. We are an independent agency. We serve 37 police, fire, and EMS agencies, and our purpose is to be the interface between those who need help and those who can help. We are the consummate go-between. We are the one in the middle that connects the two. It is important to show the needs of our citizenry, and we do that. I do that in the form of calls for service. We have, for the first time, have broken over 80,000 calls for service. These are calls into the 911 center that result in some agency being dispatched to some extent. So this could be a call for a police officer, the fire department, ambulance service. So in 2007, we broke 80,000 for the first time. In fact, we're just shy of 82,000 calls for service into our center. Calls themselves are another matter. We take over 400,000 calls into our center, but not all of them result in something being dispatched. Some are questions that citizens have. Which side of the road do we park on tonight because I live in Glenwood City, for example? Those types of questions we get quite often. It's important to show you also the breakout of these calls, and I've done so in 5 categories. These 5 categories are selected because they're categories that take a considerable amount of time because of the seriousness of the category. These categories are domestics, burglaries, robberies, and thefts, injury, accidents, EMS related, those are ambulance calls, and assaults. And what I've done is draw a comparison between 2006 and 2007 to show you the trend of where these calls are going. These are time-consuming calls that take not only the time of the emergency service provider, the police, fire, ambulance, but also the dispatcher. These tie up the dispatch center until help can arrive in some fashion. So showing the trend of these more serious calls kind of helps also show the trend of the needs of our center.
Casey, before you move on, please.
Yes.
On that slide are injury accidents that result in an EMS call incorporated in those numbers, or are they in addition or separated?
They are separated. They are in addition.
And so on with the other categories where a domestic might result in calling in an injury accident, those are not double counted. Each one is separate. We add them together.
Yep, thank you for pointing that out. That is correct. This is how the dispatcher codes the incoming call. So if a caller says, I'm involved in a domestic, The dispatcher will code it as a domestic, and if there's a chance for an ambulance to be needed, the code will remain domestic and an ambulance will be added. So there will not be a special second code of EMS. So these are all independent calls. There's no overlap here. Enhanced Cellular 911, what an incredible tool that you folks help to support the citizens to have as a tool for St. Croix County. This is when you dial 911 on your cell phone, we can tell where you are. In the past, we didn't know where you were. We had to rely on you to tell us. Some people didn't know where, and maybe still don't know where they are, but some people didn't know where they are. And when they dial 911, it's important, of course, for us to find out where they are. This allows us to do that. But what it also does is bring about a reality on our center. In the past, when someone was to dial 911 on a cell phone and hang up, we had nothing to go on. We had nowhere to dispatch an officer to. We had no idea what was happening. Now, if someone dials 911 on a cell phone, we got them. We know where they are, and we have to dispatch law enforcement. In some cases, we dispatch fire and ambulance, depending on the situation. But we dispatch to what is now a plotted icon on the map. Call volume has exploded as a result of wireless 911. It's a good thing. The good certainly outweighs the demand, which can be perceived as bad, but it's certainly a good thing that we have this. It's the reality of what wireless 911 has brought to our center. Over 339% increase in call volume related specifically to telephone call complaints. These are the 911 hangups that we don't know who the person is. Okay. We use a system down in the 911 center. It's called the time system. This is a computerized system that links the state, us to the state, as well as the nation. And this is how we run a person to see if they're wanted. We run a person to see if they are valid to drive or if their vehicle's been stolen. This is how we are able to determine that. Queries in a one-year time frame are over 332,000 queries. That's a tremendous amount of queries that we run through the time system in a yearly and daily basis, if you break it down. Again, showing the trend of the activity in our center. We are the centralized point for the county, not only for the Sheriff's Department, but all law enforcement agencies, all municipal judges use us to enter warrants. They use us to enter information on missing or runaway individuals, stolen vehicles, parts, all sorts of things that get entered into the system, the time system, and then are at the fingertips of anyone in the nation to determine if someone is wanted or if a vehicle is stolen. We are the entry point for St. Croix County, and again, showing the trend, we're over 3,200 entries into the time system for stolen warrants, all those types of items that we address. We are extremely thankful for the support for the additional staff that we've received in the past, but this chart shows the percentage of call volume per dispatcher, and it's important to note that on average, we're still above where we were in January of '04, even with the additional staff. We're just shy of 5,000 calls per dispatcher, even with the increase in staff. So I wanted to put that in some perspective before you as well. We have a comprehensive policy manual. We have over 116 policies that the dispatchers use as a guide to help streamline our approach to dispatching for those 37 agencies. And this is our backup center. This is a meat and potatoes operation that we have in Baldwin. This is in the event we have to leave Hudson. If you'll draw a comparison between this and what I'm about to show you takes place down in the basement of this building, hopefully you'll see a striking difference between the two. This is a two-position council that's located in Baldwin. In the event we have to leave here, we still can maintain emergency dispatch services out of Baldwin. This is our backup center, and we train there twice a year. Current project is to replace all our radio bases. We have 37 radio bases throughout the county. The county board has approved half of that for 2008, and the other half will be before you for 2009. That will give us a positioning to not only replace aging radio bases, but also make us in line with the FCC narrowbanding mandates that are coming forward in 2013. Future challenges involve not only the possible expansion, physical expansion of the communication center, looking at a cost-benefit study for what's called emergency medical dispatching. That's the pre-arrival instructions that some centers provide people calling for ambulance services. And also to meet the independent needs of our agencies that we serve. This is the center in the basement. If you remember the photo, or you can see that in front of you, the photo from Baldwin. This is the 911 center that's downstairs. There are 4 positions that are very similar. In fact, they're identical. And these positions allow the dispatcher to connect with the agencies. This photo right here is something that was just installed last week. This is what you approved a short time ago. That's the monitor for our security cameras in the government center. We currently have 10 cameras installed that were installed recently, and we are going to install 2 others. So that is our monitoring system that's on our wall down in our 911 center that allows us to monitor the camera angles. A lot of these cameras can turn and rotate and allow us to zoom in as well. So we have manipulation ability on quite a few of these cameras. And this is the fruit of your labor here, of your approval for those security cameras. I wish to thank the Emergency Management and Emergency Communications Committee for their dedication, their time, and their support. And I wish to thank you as well for your support. Any questions?
Bill?
There's an awfully big increase in assaults that you track. And I was wondering what the geographical locations might be where the increases are. Do you have any idea?
No, this is a county-wide analysis I did not break down. And you bring up a very good point. It's how the dispatcher codes it as it comes in. An officer can be assigned an assault complaint and find out that perhaps it was fabricated. So I wish to caution you as well. This is how the call comes to us. This is our reality and our world of what is going on. An officer could find out that the actual assault complaint is just made up and it didn't exist. So I wish to caution also these statistics that showing what is happening out in the county. This is our demand on us. Assault complaints come in, they're assigned as from a dispatcher standpoint, and then they're reacted to by law enforcement. But where they are within the county, I did not break that down.
Second question, I was wondering what the meaning on the last page of among your future challenges. It says, continue to study the cost-benefit ratio for a structured emergency medical dispatch. What did you have in mind there?
Emergency medical dispatch is a structured, monitored program that has quality assurance built into it that provides the dispatcher with a series of flow chart questions for the callers. A caller could call and say, I'm having chest pain. Well, the dispatcher then goes to the chest pain page and asks a series of questions. Emergency medical dispatch can also provide emergency services a better clue as to how they should respond. We can provide recommendations as to their response code, whether that's lights and sirens or non-emergent. There are a lot of facets of an emergency medical dispatch program. It's a costly program. It's about a $100,000 program to implement in a 911 center. And it's also a time-consuming program, not only for monitoring, but also for partnering with ambulance services throughout the county. So it's a cost factor that we'll have to weigh in a budget.
So are the decisions on it basically a medical question or something to do with the dispatch and the amount of time available that we have in the county?
The second of which, the structured program is tried and true. It's not a question over whether or not it's a good program or a bad program. It's a question over whether or not financially and personnel-wise we can support it at this point.
From being on the other side of the person doing the response, the emergency dispatching for medical is a great asset for us out on the street. I many times have come up, gotten a response to saying a person unresponsive, whereas the ability for them to be able to start even giving information on what needs to be done for that person out there in the field. One of the things we have to remember is that some of us, if you just go in and do a mapping of the time from your house to the nearest ambulance, that is if the people are sitting in the ambulance at that time, and just look at your time. If nothing is being done, approximately 10 minutes. If you live more than 10 minutes, why was the ambulance called? I mean, I'm not making it facetiously, but to make the understanding that they are now able, if they use them, the screens that they've got, they will be able to start telling you what you need to do, or any of the people that are out there, along with telling the crews, yes, the person is now breathing, the person is no longer breathing, little bit of medical history on what might be going on, and they're slowly, I know you're even putting some of that information on there right now of saying this has had previous contacts of cardiac or whichever, so we are starting to get some of that. And it gives us an idea of what we're going to need to do when we come from our vehicle going into the house. Do I need to bring all 6 of my packs in, or do I only need to bring 2 packs? So yes, it is a very good system.
Any other questions? If not, thank you, Casey. We are then going to take a 10, 15-minute break at this point before we move on. The resolution that we will consider is establishing public participation procedures in the St. Croix County Comprehensive Plan. You have the resolution in your packet. Yeah, let's, I'm going to let you handle it. I'm going to have Cindy. Cindy has added a word to one of the sentences. I'm going to let her handle that for you.
I didn't actually add it, but there was a change to the resolution. It's under the second whereas. It's the 4th line down where it starts or amended. And the word plan was added after comprehensive. So or amended comprehensive plan elements. Second whereas, 4th line down, or amended, should read or amended comprehensive plan elements, and that was, I believe, added by Corp Counsel after his review.
I will make the motion to adopt this resolution with the word plan inserted as described by the county clerk.
I'll second that.
I'd like to have Ellen Denzer come up and explain this a little bit.
Okay, Alan.
Good morning. My name is Ellen Denzer. I'm a senior planner in the Planning and Zoning Department. For those of you who don't know me, which a few of you don't. Basically, I just want to give you a brief overview of what this resolution is about. As many of you are aware, St. Croix County has applied for last fall under the county board did through the Planning and Zoning Committee for a comprehensive planning grant, which we were awarded. This grant was for $75,000, and this is to do a comprehensive plan for St. Croix County, which also, as you are aware, was one of the strategic initiatives identified at the county board goal-setting session. The public participation procedures for the comprehensive plan is one of the required steps that we have to do under state statutes. What this does is outline those procedures in coordination with what was identified in the comprehensive planning grant application and with what we have done in the past with our comprehensive planning projects for various towns in the county and what we did about 10 years ago when we did the last comprehensive plan for St. Croix County. Just so you're aware, and I know this was probably brought up when Dave Fedrosi did our annual report last month, but this comprehensive planning grant is going to be in cooperation. It was a multi-jurisdictional application, multi-jurisdictional project with West Central Wisconsin Regional Planning, 2 other counties in the region, and several municipalities within St. Croix County, including the towns of Star Prairie, Emerald, Richmond, Forest, and Katy, and the villages of Deer Park and Woodville. The comprehensive planning project, what it will do, it identifies in here that we are adopting, and the second whereas, we are adopting these public participation procedures to foster public participation at every step throughout the project, that we do have a comprehensive or a county planning and zoning agency as identified under the county rules and regulations, the planning and zoning committee, that we have reviewed them, the committee has, and recommends them. And attached to this document is a list of the basic steps we would do, and it is identified in the last statement that these are the minimum that we would do additional items as needed. What this identified in the second and third page, the attachment, the activities would be open meetings, open records by the Planning and Zoning Committee and the County Board, of course. Workshops, there's at least 3 workshops we would plan to do on issues identification, a visioning workshop for the county, and a visual preference workshop for the county. We would also conduct a public opinion survey, a statistically significant one that would identify the public opinions of all those throughout St. Croix County. We would hold open houses throughout the project to present everything that was identified and gathered for the public to have input and comment on. These open houses would probably be held at a couple of different locations. That will be determined as we go along, but in areas both east and west and north and south of the county. It also has a statement in there about input from local municipalities. Basically, this comprehensive plan will incorporate comprehensive planning from all local cities, villages, and towns throughout the county, not just those who are part of this project. And there are most of the communities in the county have done comprehensive plans under this comprehensive planning law in recent years. We've been assisting several of them. And other communities have chosen to go and do those on their own. But all of those would be reviewed and incorporated into this project. We will also maintain an internet site here at the county with information about the project as we go along, with all information as we've developed it. And the West Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission will be developing and having an internet site and a chat page for people to provide comments and discussion on these projects. Of course, as required by the statutes, we would send out draft copies of the plan to all local municipalities for review. We would also hold public hearings as required by statute for review and approval before the Planning and Zoning Committee would bring a final document forward to the County Board. And throughout this project, we would give reports to the County Board on the progress of it and what's going on. And invite all of you, of course, to participate in a variety of ways. In addition to these public participation procedures, our grant application also identified a number of activities that we would be doing and regional planning would be doing in addition, and I just thought I would mention a couple of those. We intend to, we've already discussed it briefly with our Planning and Zoning Committee, but we intend to create a Citizens Advisory Committee to the project, and we would have a Technical Advisory Committee. The Citizens Advisory Committee would be made up of some combination of local citizens and interested people and local officials. The Technical Advisory Committee, as we did in the past, would be made up of county staff members and state and federal agency people with technical expertise to provide to this project. Also, just to mention, because it's kind of interesting, what regional planning has done is decided to have 4 very specific and strategic focus groups throughout this project for the whole region to make sure there's a lot of coordination on what's happening outside and adjacent to our boundaries. The regional planning is planning on a transportation focus group made up of a variety of transportation officials, including city, village, town, county, highway people, state and federal highway people. They're also planning an economic development focus group, which would be made up of economic development agencies, technical colleges, and universities throughout the area, and the state agencies like the Department of Commerce. a land use focus group with Natural Resources, Department of Natural Resources, Natural Resource Conservation Service, and all county and land conservation planning departments, and a variety of groups like that, and a sustainable and energy focus group, which will probably be the first one in the state to do this. It will include groups from like Dairyland Power, Thousand Friends of Wisconsin, the Agriculture Stewardship Initiative, the Sustainable Development Organization out of River Falls, and a few others like that. So those are some of the additional steps that will be done outside of just St. Croix County's public participation procedures in order to provide a great deal of input and information from a variety of sources. Are there any questions on this? Yes, Bill.
Yeah, I was wondering about what the deadlines are. This is, I recall, this is supposed to be done by 2010, is that correct?
Yes, the grant application that we have has a 2.5-year time frame to get this project done, and we are projecting 2010. There isn't any clear consensus from any places that we've sought advice as to whether that means January 1, 2010 or December 31st, 2010. So we're looking at it as December 31st, 2010. So, but that was your question also. Okay. Yes.
I was wondering whether or not consultants as well as the public are going to be participating. Nothing is mentioned here about them.
The one thing that is mentioned is that any consultants we would hire, that's in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The fifth whereas, it says any consultants we would hire would also participate in all of our written procedures to foster public participation. We have discussed that again with the committee. We do have a $75,000 grant. We have some specific activities we hope to accomplish, like the public opinion survey, but we would also like to use that money very strategically to get consulting assistance on the areas where there's lack of expertise, or perhaps where outside information would be very valuable. With $75,000, it isn't always enough to do a complete request for the whole project to be assisted with the consultant. I happened to have a conversation with Polk County recently, and they had done requests for bids, and they were telling me that their bids all came in around $250,000. So we will be using our money very carefully and very strategically to get the assistance we need with the committee's direction. Any other questions? Okay.
Any other questions of, at this point? Okay. Any questions on the resolution at all?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to introduce an amendment.
Okay.
Can I use the podium?
Sure can.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Going through this plan that we have here, I'm offering some friendly amendments to the public participation procedures for the St. Croix County Comprehensive Plan. What I've passed out is 3 amendments that are, in my opinion, is clarification. On the back page of this procedure plan, after the first bullet, it just clarifies who we're talking about, as the public includes non-county agencies and regular persons, basically anybody. And then after that, there's another amendment. The second amendment would be to add the appropriate county departments are responsible for development of those elements of the plan that are germane to their area of operation. That just recognizes that there are other entities involved in this plan, which would include, Highway Department, Building Services, the rest of the other agencies here in the county. And then the third change is just the next bullet, that actually the second bullet, then the third amendment would be just, in my opinion, it just reads better. It's just a little housekeeping, in my opinion, that other government units will be notified of the county's undertaking the preparation of comprehensive plan. I'd like to make a motion to adopt these amendments to this plan. Is there a second?
Is there a second to that? Motion made by Lauren, seconded by Jerry to adopt the amendments as presented. Discussion. Button.
Question, Mr. Chairman, to the author of the amendment. Why did you choose to eliminate internal, adjacent, or overlapping jurisdictions in your amendment? That's the third item of your amendment, which would change the second bullet point on page 2 of the attachment to the motion. Don't we want to have that?
Well, but other government...
Microphone.
I believe that other government agencies, other government units include all those internally, externally adjacent.
And you want to include some that aren't internal, adjacent, or overlapping? Is that your point?
I guess all the other government units should be notified over and above the internal, adjacent, and overlapping jurisdiction.
So
it's a little more generic. I thought it read a little better. I liked it.
So if, for example, if we were to say the governmental units including internal, adjacent, or overlapping jurisdictions, that would have the same meaning as what you have proposed, would it?
I would think so, but we can certainly amend it.
No, I'm just seeking to understand where you're going here. You want the widest possible definition of what is meant by governmental units, it sounds like.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, as chairman of this committee, we passed this resolution at our last meeting, and everyone here signed it. Every one of us had the opportunity to correct this thing at that time. These amendments appear to me coming from some other source other than our committee. And when we look at the number 2, the appropriate county departments are responsible for development of these elements. Those elements of the plan are germane to their area of operation. That's always been true. However, we can't have 5 or 6 separate plans and try to coordinate them without participation of the planning department. And that's what we're trying to get at. We, from the ground floor, I worked on the outdoor recreation plan and the bicycle plan, and we had planning involved from the beginning. We have to have at least a representative there so they can coordinate these things, get them started properly so they're coordinated. So therefore, I'm against these things.
Are there any other comments?
I have another question. I don't understand the number 1. The public is defined as non-county agencies. Sure. Everything in addition to county agencies. Is that what you mean?
Well, when I read it, I did include and public persons, non-county agencies and persons in general, I guess. I didn't put that on this, but I apologize.
So once again, the word public, in the original language, the word public would be interpreted as widely as possible to include every kind of agency, every kind of entity, person, anybody who wanted to comment, which presumably is the public.
Yes, and they are invited to participate. It's just defining public includes people outside the county agencies.
Well, Mr. Chairman, now that I understand the amendments, it appears to me that they do not, they are not inconsistent with the original motion, and they don't add anything, as long as we have this, we've just had this discussion of what it is. The amendment simply seeks to use the widest possible reach in obtaining comment, and I think that's what the committee meant, and that's what the motion and the attachment meant also. So as long as we all remember that in the next 2.5 years, as Ellen said, that we're gonna go as wide as possible and get all the input we can, which is our normal method. It's not necessary to amend this motion, and the amendment itself creates more ambiguities than it solves, in my view. So I think I'll be voting against it.
Darrell?
As pointed out by the chair of the committee, it was passed unanimously by those voting. Therefore, I'd like to inquire of the other two members who voted in the affirmative, in addition to the chairman and the presenter of the amendment, as to their opinion on the offered amendments, if in their opinion it adds or detracts to the motion that they originally voted on.
Sharon?
Yes, since I voted for this and I signed it, and you all see my name on here, I can tell you that I'm not in favor of these amendments. I think that this resolution is quite complete. I think that in the past, the Planning and Zoning Department, and I'm just new to the department, so please take me from where I come, which is when I served on Land and Water Conservation and we worked on a bicycle plan, that the Planning Department has been very cooperative working with all the other departments in the county that had input into that bicycle plan. So I'm counting on that same thing happening with this resolution, and I would ask that you just vote for this resolution as it stands.
Steve?
I guess I would have to say that my understanding was this was for public input is what we're looking for. The board always has a working relationship and always consults with other governmental units on portions that would impact their operation. So we would, like highway, transportation, all the other groups, they would be consulted. Obviously, I don't think the intention was ever to take the public's input and deviate from, say, a plan that other departments have in the works. So this was just for a outside governmental public input to assist with this plan. That was my understanding of what I signed.
Any other comments on the proposed amendments? If not, let's vote on the amendments. All those in favor of amending the resolution as presented, answer by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. We'll then move into the last part of our session today, and I remind you that if anybody wishes to speak to this group, this is the time we're going to do it. We'll allow you 2 minutes per person, and you must have gotten the approval of your supervisor to talk to the board here. We'll start out, if we can, then with Kim Dupre, who wishes to speak.
Oh, thank you. As I'm setting this up, I'll let you know I worked for Deluxe Check Printers over in Shoreview, Minnesota for about 7.5 years. And one of my managers over there always told me, Kim, don't be afraid to be a little corny sometimes. Corny works. People get it,
they remember it. So in respect out of that former manager and his advice, I bring some toy cows with me today. And what I want to do is try to explain a little bit about nursing home funding. Simply because if you're like me and you don't deal with Medicaid reimbursement, IGT fund terminology, Medicare, all this sort of stuff on a regular basis, you just aren't familiar with the terms and the lingo and the vocabulary, and it takes a while to catch on to all that. So what I decided to do was try to do something that we're all fairly familiar with, living in this rural county that we live in, and also being a farm girl myself, trying to tap into something that I understand and I know. So I have here, whoops, cow tipping already. I have here some cows here to demonstrate nursing home funding. Now please don't tell our residents I was calling them a bunch of cows. That's not the intent. Just merely making an allegory. Thank you. So a lot of the nursing home funding looks like there are certain cows that in the barn that do produce enough milk to cover the cost of their care, their feed, their vet bills, the barn that they live in, the help that it takes to milk them. There are certain cows that do that. On the other hand, there are other cows in the barn that don't produce enough milk to cover the cost of their care. Now, they do produce enough milk to cover the majority of the cost of their care, but not the entire cost of their care. And that is very similar to the nursing home. There are patients or clients or residents in there that do bring in enough revenue to cover the cost of their care and to cover the cost of other cows or other residents' care. And the same is true on the inverse, that there are some residents in there that don't bring in enough revenue to cover the cost of their care. And so that's the situation that we have. And obviously you have a balancing act here that you make sure you have enough cows in the barn that produce enough milk to cover the cost of their care and to cover the cost of other cows' cares. So if you got to keep the balancing act going, and then if you can't, for some reason, get enough cows in your barn that produce enough milk to cover the cost of their care and to cover the cost of the other cows, you probably, as a typical farmer, would diversify. You would do something like putting out a cash crop, send the wife to town to work, I don't know, do something to diversify and to bring in more revenue. That's what a typical farmer would do. And so I like some of the ideas that they've talked about with the nursing home as, diversifying either the assisted living, expanding the rehab, putting in a pool for water therapy, doing other things to bring in revenue that will cover the cost of the care for those who don't bring in enough revenue. And the other thing, the state likes to come in, and the state has made an offer, I guess, that if you downsize to 50 beds, you get an extra $10 a day for the cows that do not produce enough milk to cover the cost of their care. Well, that sounds like a pretty good deal up front. But the catch to that little incentive is that you have to give up 2.5 cows here in order to get that extra $10 a day. And so when I give up the 2.5 cows, I'm giving up $1.3 million in revenue at least in order to get at most $182,000 to cover the cost of the care for these cows which do not produce enough milk to cover the cost of their care. So that didn't sound like a real great idea to give up $1.3 million to get $182,000. And that's if every single cow left in your barn was the kind of cow that did not produce enough milk to cover the cost of their care. The other item to think about is the current nursing home was originally built for 128 beds. So if I had a barn with cows in it and I had 50-some cows in it, I actually have half the number of cows that the building was originally built for. So thus the cost of maintaining the barn is now double the number of cows I have. And the catch to that is I can't paint half the barn. I can't roof half the barn. I can't clean half or heat half the barn. So obviously to maintain the building, the original barn that the cows were in with less number of cows, doesn't make that a very viable option either. Well, there were some people over in Eau Claire who thought, well, it's time to quit this game. This is too complicated. We can't make it work. We're going to sell the cows, sell the barn, go to Florida, retire, and forget the whole thing. And what Eau Claire found out was actually what happened was that unlike the dairy farmer who can do that, can sell the cows and sell the farm and move to Florida and forget everything, the county can't do that. The county is still responsible to pay for the care for certain individuals. And the cost of that care can run 2 to 3 times the cost of doing it ourselves. Trempealeau County is over $700 a day to take care of a mentally ill person or a mentally challenged person or an extra frail person with special needs. That's a lot of money to shell out of county that doesn't benefit ourselves or our residents. And so that was something that it's not always a great idea just to sell off and forget about the whole thing, because we can't do that as a county. So in closing, I'd just like to relay a conversation I had with a friend of mine a couple weeks ago. She works for international corporate finance for 3M. And she spent, 3 weeks in Germany on her job here in the spring, and she's scheduled to go to China here later this fall, and she's working on a project with the folks in Singapore. And the one thing she's told me a couple weeks ago just really struck me. She says the major challenge in her job, working for 3M and working with these other countries, is that there's such a difference in mindset. Here in America, we're looking at the next quarter, the next budget cycle. She said, when you're dealing with these other countries, especially the Asian countries, they're looking at the next generation. That's what they're looking to do. That's what they're looking to fulfill their goals. They're looking to leave a legacy. They're not looking just for the next budget cycle, the next quarter, the next short-term results. And it just struck me as we have this conversation about the nursing home, that's the question we each need to ask ourselves. What is our mindset? Is it short-term? Is it just the next election, just the next budget cycle? Or is our mindset more long-term? Are we looking to do something for the future? And so that's what I'll leave with you today. Because this home is really our home. It's the taxpayers' homes. It's not meant for the rich and famous, but it's meant for those of the rest of us who, hopefully, we won't need it, but if and when we do, it'll be there for us. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, might I ask that the future speakers limit themselves to 2 minutes as you instructed? Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak on this issue? Anybody in the audience that wishes to speak to this? If not, we will cut off the public discussion.
Clarification, Mr. Chairman, are you taking public comment on both 6 and 7 at this point, or on 6 only, or on 7 only?
Frankly, they're going to work together because we need to have general discussion also. So the two of them really should have been listed as one.
So anybody who's here and wants to speak on either topic should do so now, is that the point?
Any other comments to be made by the public? Okay, at that point, then we'll just put it to general discussion with the board here. John?
Question, Mr. Chairman, about the timing of this resolution as it fits with the county board's decision about 2 months ago to advance an advisory referendum. There's an ad hoc committee that's working on that. I have a question about the chronology of where this is heading.
I think the committee that's working on this question was looking for this kind of a discussion today, if that's what you wish to do, to enhance and to help them with their referendum question. And that's basically the reason for the discussion. Besides that, on number 6, a while back, the Human Health Committee sent a motion to us to have, send a motion out to have the a nursing home built supported by the county, and to also build a 20 a new 20-unit assisted living facility. And that question needs to be addressed, and that's why it's on the agenda today.
Mr. Chairman, will someone from the committee move this resolution to the floor for discussion?
That's appropriate. Can we get someone to move the first resolution to the floor?
Mr. Chairman, I will move the resolution to the floor for discussion.
Is there a second on that? Fred? Fred Horn seconds. Okay, we're continuing to open it up for discussion. Steve?
I guess, thank you, Board Chair. I guess the move I'd like to say is I question whether this thing is even eligible for consideration, given the past actions of the board. And I guess I would refer this to corporate counsel to ask if we can even move on this resolution, given that I believe what we're up against here is what is called trying to reconsider the action that was taken in March. And the wording on that by a vast majority was to take this to a referendum or an advisory referendum. And according to what I've read on Robert's rules, in order to reconsider what they're getting ready to play here, or what we're getting ready to move on, is that it cannot be applied to a vote on a motion that may be renewed within a reasonable time, or when practically the same result may be attained, or when the vote has been partially executed. I believe this board has partially executed on the March vote to take it to an advisory referendum asking the question, and by giving notice to the public that we are going to do that, I fail to understand, and I'm going to ask for corporate counsel's opinion, that we can now vote to move forward with building a new nursing home facility. So that's my question.
The first question is it even possible to consider this today in light of the board's action calling for a referendum in November? I think the answer to that is yes. It is considerable because this is a new board, and new boards can't be dictated to by previous boards in most cases. And while you do mention the fact that if there's been action taken in reliance on a previous board action, then this board would be powerless to do anything differently. I don't think the referendum question has reached the point where we can't turn back. So I would say it's my opinion that this resolution can be considered today by this board, even though the previous board called for a resolution question. And any comments to that?
Well, I guess my understanding was, according to Robert's rules, that this board is bound because of an action that is in place and has had a time limit set. That I don't believe that we can just arbitrarily undo that with an action that's in play. Are we then going to say that we could vote and tell the voters now that we are not going to bring this to a referendum?
And then that would be my second point. If the board agrees, and the board can certainly agree that this isn't appropriate and they can move to table it indefinitely, or you can vote it down. But if the board does act on the resolution, and if the board adopts this resolution, it's my opinion that that would void the previous action by this board to call for a referendum question in November, and the board would be taking a completely different course in regard to the nursing home.
Would that require a 2/3 vote?
No, I don't believe so.
Buck?
We were given today the minutes of the July 2 meeting of the Nursing Home Advisory Referendum Committee, and I, of course, looking at them with interest in here, and I see that Supervisor Spear is recommending that the question be a simple and general one, and Mr. Standifer
Is your
offered
microphone on?
possible, yes, it is on, a possible wording of the question. And I'm wondering, what is the status of that committee? I haven't attended any of the meetings. Are they getting close to developing a question? There's some September deadline, I think I've heard, in order to make that November general election deadline. Are they getting ready to recommend something to the county board here? Is there a timetable being talked about? What's the status of that, if you know, or if the chairman of that committee can tell us?
The chairman's gonna have to handle that, because I don't know what the status is right now. Who is that?
As it stands right now, we don't have anything definite, but we're formed a lot of opinions and so forth. I didn't attend the last meeting. I was sick. But I think at our next meeting, there will be a lot of stuff come forward. At this time, I can't just say if we'll finish the question or not.
Was there, could supplement the chairman's report then?
Darrell?
Well, at the liberty of appearing to speak for the committee, which I'm not really intending to, I think that we have a clear consensus that we will have a report for the August board meeting. We have spent considerable time not necessarily trying to draft the language yet. We've played with some language, but spending some time on what is it that we want to learn. We're going to take a ballot referendum question, an advisory referendum, seeking the opinion of county citizens, county taxpayers, and so we've been asking ourselves, once folks have voted yes or no on whatever that ballot question is, what do we want to learn from that? What will we know that will better equip us for the future? So we've spent a lot of time talking about that in our committee. We've looked at some language, and I don't think I would have any committee member push back on this statement. We fully intend to complete our work and have a recommended ballot question here for consideration of this board in August.
Julie, you had something to add?
Yes, I'll agree exactly with what Darrell has said. That's the way I think the committee felt, and the way we were going, and the making headway in it, and that we were going to make the presentation in August for the board. I'm also very concerned that the board, true, it was what we call the old board, made a decision to have this go as a referendum to the voters. Now we have a committee coming in saying, no, we're going to go ahead and you have to drop it. Does that start a precedent that I can come to the board in a couple of months and say, you can't do this because public protection doesn't want it done. We want to see it done this way. The county board should be the final say. My feelings.
Buzz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Supervisor Spear, just to comment on your concern that what was decided at the March 28th Health and Human Services Committee meeting and meetings thereafter regarding the referendum, there's nothing in this resolution that in any way advocates the rescinding of the referendum. So I don't even think that if we're looking at the resolution in hand, I don't think the referendum issue should even be a part of that. That's still a goal, if I'm not mistaken.
Sharon?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I do believe that our Corporation Counsel has just recently, in the last few minutes, spoken to us to tell us that it's his opinion that if we pass this resolution that we have in front of us, we negate our advisory referendum for November. Is that not correct, Mr. Timmerman?
That's what I think the effect of adopting this resolution that's being considered right now is. If the board wants to adopt the resolution and then move that the referendum go forward, the board can do that too. But in my mind, that doesn't make any That doesn't follow a logical progression of what this resolution does.
Darrell?
Reluctant as I am to disagree with Corp Counsel, and I rarely do that. Since at this point, Corp Counsel was expressing I believe a personal opinion, not a legal opinion. Would you concede that?
No, it's my legal opinion.
Okay, all right. That places me on a little bit more tenuous grounds of disagreement, but I still will disagree. Since the specific question of the referendum is not addressed in this resolution, it would be my non-legal opinion that it does not negate that, and we would, in fact, still proceed hypothetically with a referendum, even if, for some reason, we would adopt this resolution today. The concern I would have would be precisely those two courses of action if we would do that. And it would seem to me that at that point, we would have placed the county board in an extremely embarrassing position of arrogance. We would have, on the one hand, said to the public and have notified the public that we are wanting their opinion, and so we have appointed 5 supervisors to work on coming up with appropriate language to place on the ballot in November in a non-advisory capacity, seeking the opinion of countywide residents, taxpayers, and citizens on the future of the nursing home.
Did you mean
and then upon
non-binding?
I said that.
You said non-advisory.
Then upon second thought, we would be saying, whoops, I guess no matter what the opinion you express in November, no matter what that is, we really don't care, because today we would have voted to proceed unilaterally without hearing your opinion. And I think that would place us in an extremely difficult and embarrassing posture. Now, the reverse could, of course, also be true. We could reject this resolution today. We could vote on it and vote it down, proceed with the ballot referendum, and the referendum this fall would say, we think you ought to proceed full bore ahead with a nursing home. Either way, we would have taken an action prior to learning the opinion of the ballot referendum that we're attempting to take. So the timing of this resolution is extremely disingenuous, and I don't think there should be any consideration of this resolution until after the ballot referendum in November at that next board meeting.
Dave, you had a question.
As a new member to the board, my hope would be, my concern, first of all, is that those who elected me, as far as this nursing home issue, we may somehow seem as a rudderless ship. This has been being batted around for years. My hope would be that we would allow this referendum question to be asked first, thinking that after we receive the feeling of the county, the folks, our residents, that we could then make a more intelligent decision on what route to take, whether it would be a brand new facility or try to live with the old one. But I think we need to have that referendum question properly phrased, and I think we would be remiss in taking any action other than waiting for that. Thank you.
Somebody else had their hand up. Steve?
Thank you, Board Chair. Just to remind the board what exactly was on that March amendment that was, not amendment, I'm sorry, motion that came forward was to keep the nursing home operating as a county entity and put this on an advisory referendum for the November 4th, 2008. And in the meantime, get more information regarding construction and remodeling and appoint a 5-person ad hoc committee to draft exact words of the referendum. And that passed 22-4.
Buck?
I was going to, in light of the discussion, make a motion to postpone this indefinitely so we could pick it up right after the November election, but I came into the meeting today hoping to hear from the proponents of this motion what they see as new since that March time. You know, about 2/3 of us were here then, and thought we were fairly well educated, had studied all kinds of options over the previous 2 years, and I'm not aware, but of course I'm not on the Health and Human Services Board, don't attend the meetings now. I'm not aware that anything significant has changed, and I was hoping to hear from those people that something was new and different in the federal funding system, or the demographics, or some reason that we would alter our course so dramatically. So I think I won't make my motion to postpone yet, if there's somebody who wants to address why this, why we should change our course, what's new about the circumstances.
Jerry?
But I don't think anyone wants to change the course. I think what we're really trying to do is to get closure on this issue. And you talk about an advisory referendum, and I think that's good and well, but to me the important issue is, what is the advisory referendum question going to be? And I think it ought to be this resolution. Let the advisory referendum read, shall the county construct a new nursing home and assisted care apartment? Amen. Then you got your vote, and whatever way it goes, but let's not keep putting this off. That's what I hear on the street. We meet, we don't do anything. So this was put here to bring it to a head today. I think what we ought to do, if Corp Council will let us do it, is to structure the language for the advisory referendum. If we have to sit here till midnight, we're at least communicating to the public that we're getting something done. And if we can do that, Corp Council, that's what I'd like to do, is to construct the language today for the advisory referendum. And I am a strong advocate for the language being what that resolution is. Thank you.
John?
Mr. Chairman, a question about the minutes we saw today. First of all, do the minutes, the July 2nd minutes that were just put on our desk today, does that imply $1.8 million in deficit plus depreciation at an estimated 100,000? And secondly, if we're going to vote on the resolution, are there any cost estimates available to us so that we have some fact sheet information to tell us more about what the long-range costs are going to be?
And what's the size that's being proposed?
Yeah, and this, as
50
Darrell,
beds or 72?
50 or 72 beds. I think it's a very complex issue, and as Gerald has said, this is a 20-year process has been going on, and that's why I've supported a advisory referendum to the board so that the whole county has a chance to speak.
Buzz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a couple of things I'd like to bring up and ask questions about them. Just so that the truth is out there, I'm looking at a statement that says, per the Finance Committee minutes from July 21st, 2005, over $450,000 of excess fund balance was transferred from nursing home monies to cover deficits for Health and Human Services, with the rest being transferred into the general fund of the county. When we talk about getting out of the nursing home business, for whatever reasons we're arguing in favor of that, I don't think there's a single department in the county that pays for itself, much less that pays for other parts of the county operation out of its own funds when there's a surplus. I think it's significant that the nursing home had an excess that it could then turn over to Health and Human Services and to the county's general fund. Another question is that At the November 6th, 2007 County Board meeting, a resolution supporting change for returning federal funds from certified public expenditures of county nursing homes. This came out of the July Wisconsin Counties Magazine, indicating that the IGT funds were wrongfully being withheld by the state of Wisconsin rather than turned over to nursing homes for whom they were originally intended. The motion was made by Supervisor Wentz and seconded by Supervisor Burry to approve. This resolution supports returning all federal funds received from the certified public expenditures of county nursing homes to the county nursing homes in order to bring direct tax relief to the citizens of St. Croix County. Supervisor Marzov suggested wording changes. Motion by Supervisor Marzov, seconded by Wentz, to delete the word have and so on. Supervisor Standifer asked if the resolution was reviewed by Corp Counsel. Chairman Malik suggested this resolution be referred back to Health and Human Services. Motion by Standifer, second by Kruger, to table until retuned by the Health and Human Services Board, carried unanimously. My question is, whatever happened to that? Has Health and Human Services ever acted on this? I don't know. I'm not asking this as a challenging question, but I am concerned that this not get lost in the shuffle. And Esther, do you know what the status of that is?
I really don't, Buzz, at this time. I don't remember that it came back to us. I think we talked about it just briefly that day, but I don't remember that it came back to us. Is that right, Fred? I'm sorry? The motion that we had before on the floor to return the monies to the counties that the state government was holding out. That's never come back to our board.
This was November 6th of 2007. It's now July 15th.
I believe that resolution that passed county board with regard to the supplemental payment, IGT, that you referred to, was put in the resolutions and adopted by WCA. I think you handled that, Roger. So that did go forward. I've not heard anything from the state or WCA that the additional funding that is diverted will be sent back to county or municipal homes.
Sharon, you had a question.
Yes, I do. If I could beg your indulgence, Mr. Chair, I'd like to read a statement.
Buzz, would you turn off your microphone? Okay.
Thank you very much. What I'm about to read are solely my thoughts and information that I've gathered in the 2+ years I've been on this board. What I'm about to read will not endear me with some of you. I hope that all of you will just take what I have to say as what I've gathered. We're being asked today to approve a resolution from the Health and Human Services Board to build and support a new county nursing home and a 20-bed assisted living facility. I cannot support this resolution for the following reasons. First, the resolution as stated does not include any dollar amounts for cost of building a new nursing home and assisted living facility and operating them. To approve this resolution would seem to me to be potentially signing a blank check for the project to go forward without any idea of the cost to the county tax levy. Second item, in March of 2008, we as a county board approved a motion to have an advisory referendum placed on the county ballot in November 2008 for the citizens of this county to let us know their wishes concerning the possibility of continuation of owning and operating a county nursing facility. I believe we owe it to our citizens to gather their input via this advisory referendum. We have promised that vehicle to them, and I believe we ought to live up to our vote in this matter, which continues to generate much discussion and discourse. Third thing, our consulting firm, Wipfli, through their representative Larry Lester, has reported to our board that the potential cost of building a new nursing home, I'll follow my lines, would be the least of our expenses for the levy. He stated to us in July 2007 that the potential tax levy for the 2007 to 2011 operation of the current nursing home could be $7.4 million, excluding capital improvements. Estimated capital improvements over 5 years based on depreciation expense would be an additional $950,000. Our risk manager has reported to us that 45% of our workman's compensation insurance claims are for reported claims at the nursing home. We have had some liability claims at the nursing home and will continue to be liable for claims in the future. On September 20th of '06, it was reported to us that 82% of costs for the current nursing home are for salaries and fringe costs. Our current contract would continue to be in place for labor with a new nursing home or continuing our present facility. A new building would add a debt service payment to our budget process and would require a bond issue to be passed by this county board. It was reported at the county board meeting in December 2007 by Supervisor Awesome, who's no longer with us. He was a member of the Health and Human Services Board. He reported to us that we have subsidized the current nursing home about $7.8 million since 2001. Number 4, I'll be brief. I'm reading quickly as I can. We have recently become part of a managed care program under the auspices of the ADRC committee, with that committee operating under the Health and Human Services umbrella. The goal of the managed care program is to allow eligible citizens to choose the level of care they need to live comfortably in the community. Within 5 years, there can be no waiting list for services under Health and Human Service statutory requirements. Nursing home care is not a mandated service for any governmental body, including counties. Nursing homes used to be the only way to receive most services through the Medicaid program. Under the managed care approach, group homes and services within a citizen's own home can be funded, as well as other acceptable choices for care. Family members, in some cases, will be able to be reimbursed for providing services to their loved ones in their own homes. It is projected to require less nursing home beds under the managed care approach. To quote Representative Kitty Rhodes, here's her quote: "The whole premise of family care is that this would not only be cost neutral, but would actually be more efficient in our use of our revenue. Anticipating that revenues are going to continue to be scarce in the next biennium," that's this biennium, "this is going to be reviewed to see if it's meeting its original goals." You'll see this quote on Journal Sentinel Online out of Milwaukee for July 1st of 2008. You can look up the article if you like. Number 5, the Spring Valley Health Center, which we've heard a lot about from some of the members of this board, is not supported by any tax levy dollars. Their fringe benefit package is approximately 33% of their wages, according to their administrator. Our fringe benefit package in St. Croix County is approximately 58% of wages, based on information provided to us in 2007. We cannot hope to operate a nursing home at even break even under that scenario, and if we are going to do that, our citizens of this county need to tell us to do that. Number 6, I'm concerned about the real estate taxes which all our citizens pay, including those elderly people who live on fixed incomes. I don't think it makes sense to subsidize some elderly or disabled with tax levy dollars and potentially force people who have lived here for many years to give up their homes and move because of our decision to subsidize county activities which are not mandated to be provided by our tax dollars. Our current tax levy cost for each nursing home bed, this was 2007, was approximately $20,000 per bed. We are anticipating a $1.3 million or more deficit in our 2009 budget. To add to that deficit in the future with unnecessary and unmandated county spending does not make sense to me. Number 7, we must compete with nursing home residents with a new nursing home in New Richmond, along with managed care placement, which may not include a nursing home bed for some residents. There is currently an inventory of beds in our county which would house all of our county nursing home residents. We've been told that by more than one source. One of the questions which I believe must be considered, and which I would hope the citizens of this county through their advisory referendum would tell us, is if this county should continue to be competing with private industry in this arena or any other endeavor. The information we have been given by our staff and consultants is that everyone in St. Croix County who needs care will be taken care of, either in a nursing home setting or some other venue under the managed care approach. This includes both Medicaid, Medicare, and private pay persons, whether or not we build a new facility. I'm just about done. Number 8, our current economic conditions in our county, state, and federal governments are alarming to me. I'm hesitant to ask our citizens to provide any more tax dollars than we currently collect. I believe that many people are already stretching their dollars to provide for transportation, food, housing, and utilities. To ask for more at this time seems unnecessary and unwise. And lastly, we currently need a new heating cooling system here in this building. The potential cost is projected to be between $1.7 and $2.4 million. We need a new roof at this building. The potential cost is around $500,000. We need a new human services building, cost unknown. There is only so much water in the well, folks, and we're required to use it for projects that we must do, not those that are discretionary. And I thank you for your attention.
Buzz?
Thank you. I just spent 12 days in the health center on the second floor of the nursing home in rehab after hip surgery. And for me, that was an epiphany. I knew from brief exposures to the nursing home that the quality of service, the care, the love, and the attention given to its residents was unsurpassed. But little did I realize until I became a resident how consistent and how unselfish and how much from the heart that ongoing care is. Stan Barr, a former counselor and coach from the New Richmond school system, was one of the visitors who came into the dining room each day to help feed his wife, who is a resident on the second floor. Not only were my eyes opened by the love and care that this gentleman has for a spouse who can no longer care for herself, but that behavior was totally congruent with the exemplary care given by every single nursing home staff member who was also assisting people who could not feed themselves, who could not wipe their face when food would spill out. There was just an ongoing exhibition of genuine, authentic love and care that I was privileged to experience to a very small degree because my needs were so small by comparison to those of the other residents with whom I shared that floor. You may recall this article that was quoted in the Pioneer Press, which was an abstract from the New York Times article. The date line is Sunday, September 23rd, 2007. The title is, "In Some Nursing Homes, Profits Trump Patients." That's not going to happen in a publicly owned facility. In terms of the deficits or the word slips my mind here, the amount by which we subsidize the nursing home, I don't think there's a single department in our county government that we don't subsidize. You may recall in the folder that I asked Cindy to place on your desks at the June meeting, the blue sheet that talks about that statistic from last July when I did some simple math and I took the $1.3 million that we were told was the operating deficit and I divided it by 55,000 tax parcels, which the real property lister gave me as the number. That came to be $23.64 per day per parcel to keep the nursing home operating with this $1.3 million. Take less than that $1.3 million by the actual dollar amount, which I think was something like $945,000, and this cost per day per parcel would even be less. I then divided the $23.64 per parcel per day by 365 days. That came to be 6 4/10 cents per tax parcel per day to subsidize our nursing home. I was told that the census at the nursing home in July, when this was written, was 58. The census, by the way, when I was a resident, was 68. And I think that speaks to the need for this ongoing facility, in spite of the fact that there's a new nursing home in New Richmond. When you divide that 6.47 cents per day by 58, it comes to 0.0011 cents per resident, per tax parcel, per day. I don't think it's asking too much of our taxpayers to subsidize our nursing home by that amount of money. You all received at your desks this morning this printout from the ad hoc Advisory Referendum Committee. Gene, I have to commend you for what I think was a very noble, unselfish endeavor on your part, and I quote, Ritz took a random poll of his own and asked people in the county whether or not they were opposed to funding a nursing home. Out of 400 persons, 3 said no. Ritz then asked if they should be taxed to pay for it. Of the 400, they all said yes. I'm all in favor of this referendum. I hope we do give the people of this county a chance to speak. And I hope that each of you somehow has the chance to go up to the nursing home and see what a quality operation we have there and what a privilege it is for those who cannot help themselves to have that available to them.
John?
We have, and I don't have the figures right here with me, but we have 2 people up there that are being overpaid. A director right now, and I think it's director of nursing. Their salaries run close to $200,000 each. And until we make a decision, this is going to hurt us all the time. And I think that, excuse me, when we, if we should have an advisory referendum, I hope the proper information is passed on to the people so they got a good information on how to vote. Yes, we've had a deficit at times. We've had a profit at times, and that's been turned over to the general fund. So it needs to be fully explained to the people when they vote. And we have until a decision is made, it's gonna mount up.
Yes, Buzz.
Is it appropriate to move the question, Mr. Chairman?
Is there any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman, was that a motion to end debate, which requires, oh, he was just asking a question, whether you were going to call for the question.
There's a couple of people that want to make comments here yet. Dave?
Mr. Chair, I'm wondering if either Fred or, I think Harold is still here. Have you guys looked into any other programs that possibly could bring in revenue? I know there was a little bit talked about in March. And I'm wondering if you've got anything new on that at all.
In the discussion about the types of residents that we care for and the possibility of looking at special populations, part of that dialogue has come from communications that we've had with Community Health Partnership, which will be the new managed care organization that will be providing long-term care services to a 5-county region. That includes, they will be funding nursing homes. One of the things that we've had preliminary discussions with them about is, are they seeing access issues in the areas that they currently provide services, that is Chippewa, Eau Claire, and Dunn County. And the answer to that is, with regard to folks that have specialized care needs, yes, they are having access issues. For those folks that need rehab, may have reduced physical functioning, that doesn't seem to be an area that they have an issue or concern at this point in time, or at least they've not communicated that. So the discussions have been very preliminary on what we might be able to do if, in fact, we were to stay in the business long term about enhanced revenues. Because the way it looks at this point in time for those individuals that are Medicaid funded, whether Community Health Partnership pays for them or not, we will receive the Medicaid reimbursement rate, which is about $145 a day. We've not engaged in any additional conversation with them at this point until we know more detail about the future of the nursing home as to what reimbursement rate they might provide to us that they'll need to get a waiver from the state on if we were to provide specialty care, memory care unit, some sort of a transitional unit, bariatric unit, those types of things. So the conversation has been very preliminary, and I don't know, I would assume that because Community Health Partnership has a responsibility to provide care for these individuals, that they would likely be engaging in conversation not only with us, but with any other provider that might be interested in providing those specialty care services that are lacking in the area. One of the other things that has been discussed with regard to a special unit, behaviors for instance, if there's a behavioral unit, the concern about additional state survey issues and citation issues is another area that would have to be looked at. I can't tell you today whether we would be able to eliminate more of the county deficit or what the county puts into the nursing home or keep it close to the same. Again, because those conversations have only gone so far, is that they are looking for somebody to look at those types of care needs in the area.
Would that change our licensing anyway at all, as far as you know?
Harold may need to respond to that. Has more detail about licensing.
As far as our licensing concern, almost all those services, other than the behavioral, will fall under the skilled nursing license, under our current license. The behavior may have some areas that we need to look a little harder at. But basically, by putting in a bariatric service, by doing a memory care unit, it will all fall under our nursing home license.
Well, I'm not going to speak very long. I just had a question for Fred. Could you talk about this handout that you've given out so that people have an idea, clear idea about what this meeting is? And could you address John Borup's questions about the dollar figures and the impact of building on operational expenses?
The handout that you have before you, because people have talked about a variety of costs associated with building a new nursing home, that it would potentially ease some of our operational costs. But today in the budget, we do not have any long-range debt in the budget because the facility is paid for. And we have not budgeted for depreciation to set aside money to develop a fund to take care of our capital needs as well as replacement planning. So we have looked at the 72-bed and a 50-bed replacement facility. Again, with a 50-bed, you are able to reduce your operational costs and enhance revenue. That's why we've continually come back to the 50-bed analysis. What you have, though, in front of you, if you look at a range, the first line, 72-bed, estimated occupancy, you can see a 68.5. You get down to then the next line, which deals with, or a line, skip a line and go right to construction cost. What would it cost per bed? And because we haven't done the details with regard to what the facility would look like, architectural fees, all of that, we put a range in there, and that range goes from $100,000 up to $150,000 per bed. So do the math, 72 beds times 100,000 or times 150,000, and you can come up with a total cost of the project, estimated now again. In terms of Medicaid, what would be the deficit there? On the very first line is $133,000. Medicare deficit with regard to capital costs is $38,853, totaling $172,199. So if the facility were built, Medicaid would underfund $133,000 and Medicare $38,000 for a total additional cost to the levy of $172,199. Then you get down to private pay, because those are the three pay sources. You have a deficit of $104,510,000. So if we did not adjust our private pay rate, the $19, the total deficit would be, or the total expense would be $276,709. If you do the $19 a day, then you just go up to the previous line. The $172,000 is the cost that we would incur in terms of additional capital cost. That same logic holds true for a 50 bed. At $100,000, you can see that we actually make money on the Medicaid formula, $53,177. Medicare, we lose a little bit of money, but the subtotal there is $26,277 to the good. Private pay, however, you will lose a little bit of money, $73,000 for a total net effect of $46,957 in terms of total loss. Again, if you increase the rate to cover your private pay, the $19, you'll end up with a net increase of $26,277. Now, it's not necessarily very likely that we would build a nursing home for $100,000 per bed. The costs that we've talked about are $125,000 approximately per bed. When we gave some preliminary information to this board, we talked with architects through Ayers and Associates. They gave us a price range of $145,000 per bed. So the scenarios basically are here to give the board at least an overview of, depending on where the costs come in, this would be additional expenditures that the county would have to look at. All but a very few of the scenarios at 50 beds with very limited costs from $100,000 to $110,000 per bed, where we would potentially see some increase in revenue. Yes.
Thank you, Fred. Just from my understanding, do these figures represent just construction costs and debt payment, or do they also include operating costs?
These numbers are only related to construction cost, capital expenses. These would not include operations.
I would like to offer the following suggested changes to the resolution as it was given to us. I would like to offer the following suggested word changes in the resolution as it was given to us. In the whereas the Health and Human Services Board met on May 28, 2008, and passed a motion to recommend to the county board that the county, please strike the word board, build a new nursing home to be funded instead of supported, to be funded by the county, comma, and to build a 20-unit assisted living facility, comma, also to be funded by the county. And then this next one is a little bit long, and I welcome suggestions to fine-tune it. Therefore, be it resolved that the St. Croix County Board of Supervisors adopts the Health and Human Services Board recommendation, comma, and approves that recommendation, comma, contingent on the following conditions. One, bids be let for estimates to A, parentheses, build a new 72-bed nursing home facility, comma, or, and I need to wordsmith that a little bit because my intent is to be open to the option of either building new or remodeling the best of the two facilities. So the B part, bids be let to remodel the best of the two existing health center structures. And C, proceed with the county-wide referendum question approved at the March 2008 County Board meeting. And I think we should put the word advisory in there, countywide advisory referendum.
I'll second it so you can debate it.
From Gerald. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I think this would be the time to make that motion to postpone, because it seems to me that frankly, with no disrespect to Supervisor Peterson, staying here till midnight and drafting the referendum question struck me as being utterly unpalatable, and besides that, unpleasant, and probably not even going to work. And now, to a much lesser degree, Mr. Marzoff has proposed some changes, and maybe we could work them out here, but maybe the best place for them to be worked out would be in the Health and Human Services Board. And meanwhile, we've heard a report that the referendum question committee, if I can call it that, is getting focused and is very likely to have something back for us in August. And you know, things just seem to be coming together, but I don't think they're going to come together today. So with that kind of background and windiness, I'm sorry, but nowhere near as pithy as your statement, Ms. Nordenbauman, but approaching it in length, I guess. Nevertheless, I make a motion to postpone this indefinitely. We can pick it back up at any county board meeting, but for now, let's just postpone the whole works, the amendment and the main motion indefinitely.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made by seconds. Motion seconded by Sharon Ballman. Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I'm sitting here kind of thinking about, we spent somewhere around $106,000, it's my understanding, for consultants to help us arrive at this decision. Now, that's an awful lot of money, and we still aren't getting the decision. So I don't know how you do this, Corp Counsel, but rather than postponing this indefinitely, we've been at it for so many years now, I would like to put a date like, say, August or September, replace the indefinite with an August or a September. I don't know if I can do that, but I would really like us to come to grips and get closure on this issue.
Just for the board's information, a motion to postpone indefinitely is not amendable.
It is according to this chart.
Okay, the motion is on the floor. There was a second. Bill?
Is this a debatable motion or non-debatable motion?
It's debatable.
Okay. In that case, it seems to me that actually there are two ways to go. We can, I don't think that just as Supervisor Marzoff's efforts here have illustrated that this motion is ready for prime time. I think it should go back to the Health and Human Services Committee, and that it should be refined there and then brought back at some point to the county board if they want to go ahead with it. But I think that one option is to just postpone indefinitely, and we can go ahead and do that. That would be okay with me. I'll probably vote for that motion. The other option, however, would be to refer it back to the committee and have them bring back a better, more refined motion to us, and then we can vote on that. I could go either way, but it does seem to me that there may be a way to incorporate what the aims of the Health and Human Services Committee are in this case into that referendum that we're going to have in November, or we're scheduled in November. And that would be to say we want to build a new nursing home of such and such a size with so many beds, with or without the assisted living facility, and it's going to cost so much, and that we expect the subsidy by the county to be roughly in this approximate amount. And I would, that would be another approach. That would be the kind of approach that I think Supervisor Peterson spoke to a few minutes ago. But as I said, I could go either way. The reason I voted against having a referendum at all was because it was so vague. Here's an opportunity to have a relatively clear, give the public a relatively clear idea about what the costs might be and what the board might be proposing. But I don't think that in the current resolution that we have enough detail to go to the public and say we know approximately how much it's going to cost. And the Health and Human Services Committee then would be the ones to refine both the monetary and the physical details of their proposal so that they could be incorporated within the proposed referendum.
Jerry.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I call the question before the House.
Is that a motion to end debate, which requires the old 2/3 vote and all that kind of stuff, or is that just a unfocused desire to have it? Since I have the floor momentarily, Mr. Chairman, I agree with Mr. Cranmer that one of the things that is lacking so far, but the time is getting to be just about right for it, I think, is to focus on the kind of facility that would be built if a facility were built. And I always thought after, Mr. Mills proposed the referendum idea, I think it was, and we came sort of within a whisker of coming up with a question right that day, but didn't do it. But I always thought that the Health and Human Services Board would be the natural one to go away and study among the various options which is the most feasible of the options, and then to let that be part of the public debate and discussion. I assumed that there'd be letters to the editor and there would be speeches and public forums and information sessions organized by people who feel strongly about this, as so many people do. And so with a motion to postpone indefinitely, there's nothing to inhibit the Health and Human Services Board from continuing to tighten up, if I can use that term, what the most feasible proposal is, and let that become a part of the public debate that leads to the referendum. Thank you.
Dan?
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question to bring all this back. A lot of talking about something. Do we have two motions on the floor at this time?
We have a motion to postpone and supersede.
Superior motion. Okay, I'm just trying to stay with all this and
Bill?
Yeah, I want to second Jerry's motion to end debate because I don't think that got second. And I think he did make the motion to end debate, not just a generic question. So I would second that motion.
All right.
Roll call vote.
Steve Hermson?
Yes.
Ken Colby? Linda Lucky? Shane Demling? Dan Rabel? Alfred Schrank?
Yes.
Julie Spear?
Yes.
Bill Peavy?
Yes.
Gerald Peterson?
Yes.
Charlie Grant?
Yes.
Greg Telejohn?
Yes.
Roger Larson?
Yes.
Richard King?
Yes.
Frederick Horn?
Yes.
John Mortensen?
Yes.
Esther Wentz?
Yes.
Jean Ritz?
Yes.
David Peterson?
Yes.
David Osnes?
Yes.
Lauren Sather?
Yes.
Richard Marzoff?
Yes.
Sharon Norton Bauman?
Yes.
Peter Post?
Yes.
Roger Rebholz?
Yes.
Bill Cranmer?
Yes.
Daryl Standifer?
Yes.
John Borup?
Yes.
Clarence Malik? 4 and 24, Fort Lee.
The motion passes. John, you have a question?
I have a comment. On the sheet we received this morning, we see the costs that are figured there, and
Point of order.
The motion has been made to postpone. We are end debate of all kinds. Okay, now we've got to go back to the resolution. Let's just postpone indefinitely. That ends the day. That ends the question, the comment, everything. Okay, then the only thing we have left then is to,
No, we gotta vote. Motion to postpone indefinitely has to be voted on.
okay, that's right, yeah, okay. Does that have to be a roll call vote also? Okay, a motion is on the floor and seconded to end debate, or to postpone indefinitely. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Okay, motion carries. Okay. The last thing that we have on here is the county clerk's report and any announcements that she has.
I just have a couple rezonings. Rezoning hearings scheduled for Planning and Zoning Committee for Thomas Pitch Estate to rezone approximately 52 acres from Ag to Ag 2 in the town of Ceylon. Tony and Deanna Lind to rezone approximately 2.354 acres from Ag to Ag residential in the town of Baldwin. And new rezoning applications submitted but not scheduled for hearing for Charles and Barbara Wire to rezone approximately 43 acres from Ag to Ag 2 in the town of Rush River, and John Bettendorf to rezone approximately 4.82 acres from Ag residential to commercial in the town of Kinnickinnick. I have no correspondence, but just another reminder on the WCA conference to let me know if you plan on attending. Early registration is in September. And you should have maybe received a card on the farm tour. Just submit that yourself if you're interested in doing that. And finally, something I may not have explained to the new county board supervisors, but we have a county board refreshment fund that buys the treats, and if we send plants or flowers out to anyone, I'll be asking for that probably next month, just $10, and Supervisor King has agreed to collect the money again for me. So I'll just send a reminder out with the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, just one thing.
Yes.
Another reminder, the fair starts Thursday, and the Planning and Zoning Committee meets at 1 o'clock here.
Okay. We are adjourned.